Hey Booktube, Science Fiction Reads here with another massive book haul. Once again, I really lucked out. This time at a sort of charity fundraiser. It was just massive, massive book sale, entire warehouse. I read the ad a couple days beforehand, and it did say science fiction was one of the genres they were going to have, and I thought, we'll see. I didn't expect much, but I did post a little YouTube short of the science fiction section when I was there. I was impressed when I got there. It was a massive selection, and probably 90% like vintage, like 90s or older. And I say vintage. To me, vintage is like pre-90s. I was born 1990. And I also, by vintage, I mean the good stuff. And I got a lot of good stuff here. I also posted a picture of a huge lot of these that I got. I'm going to go through them quickly, and maybe I'll have a special video on these one day. But these are the World's Best SF, an annual that Donald A. Wollheim from Da Books had from 72 to 1990. Which I think is 19 books. But there was a series before this. I think it was just, oh yeah, World's Best Science Fiction. I think that was the name for a number of years before this line started. But these came out in paperback, but then they all were released as a hardcover in the book club format. So I saw a stack of 17 of these, 16, there was one double. For $10, and I already had 5, I think. Most of them were doubles though. So at the moment I have, I think, 17 out of 19, so I've got almost all of them. So let's go through them here somewhat quickly. This is the first one, 72. I'm gonna guess that's a Frank Frazetta cover art. It is Frank Frazetta. So 1972, the first book here, Larry Niven, Joanna Russ, a couple names I'm not familiar with, Paul Anderson, Christopher Priest. There's a Barry Malzberg story in here called Guyana, which was published in Galaxy. I was toying with the idea of just taking a picture of the table of contents for each of these and posting them up beside the book as I talk about them. But there's a lot of these, so I'll take the easy way out and just go through these quickly. So that's 72. I don't have 73, but we've got 1974, and I think the cover artist is on the back. Yeah, Victor Valla. And in here, these were all edited by Donald Wollheim and Arthur W. Saha. We've got some Spinrad, Ellison, Robert Sheckley, E.C. Tubb, a Michael Bishop, and a Clifford Simak. 1975. This is this is some wild cover art. I love how funky that is. That was painted by Richard V. Corbin. Let's just see some of the highlights here. A Song for Leah by George R.R. Martin. Didn't expect that. There's a Bob Shaw story in here. The Sun's Tears by Brian Stableford. I love Brian Stableford. Although now it occurs to me, I don't think I've ever read a short story by him. I've read probably 10 or 15 of his novels. 76. I really like that cover. That actually might be one of my favorites of this group of books. That was painted by Chet Jezierski. Interesting that it's a different artist each year. I like that. Fritz Leiber, Bernie Vinge, Barrington J. Bailey, The Bees of Knowledge. Actually, that is a story I've read. Think about a human on like a alien planet who gets lost in it, like a giant human-sized beehive. It was pretty trippy with a trippy ending. I can't remember the ending at all, but it was pretty out there. 77. This is one I already own. This actually might be the copy I do own, and I replaced it with the one I just bought. I'm just trying to... I've read one or two of the ones I own. This might be the one I read. It's got some Aldous. Again, Barrington J. Bailey, Joanna Russ, Damon Knight. 78. I just can't believe I found the majority of these. This was painted by Richard Powers. That I could have guessed. He's got a very particular style. You can find his art on a lot of old paperbacks. Joe Haldeman, John Brunner, John Varley. Oh, Eyes of Amber by Joan D. Vinge. That is the title story of one of her short story collections. Not one of my favorite short stories of hers, but she's an excellent short story writer. 1980. Gotta see who painted this. Gary Viskupic. Again, George R.R. Martin, The Way of Cross and Dragon. I really didn't expect to see him in here, let alone multiple times. Tanith Lee, Ted Reynolds, Joanna Russ. 1981. For the most part, these are all in pretty good shape. They actually feel like they haven't been opened in a long time, if ever, some of them. John Varley, Norman Spidrad. Again, George R.R. Martin with Night Flyers. That one I recognize. Yeah, Lisa Tuttle, Bob Lamont, Michael G. Coney. Some people I don't recognize, but that's the whole point of these. To put some rising talent out there, them more recognition. Now, this I did not get in this haul, but I took it off the shelf to show anyway. It's the only one the only one I had that wasn't in this batch, so I just took it off the shelf just to show. It's the 1982. I have not read this one. Painted by Don Wilson, the cover art. C.J. Cherry in there. I don't actually think I've read C.J. Cherry short stories. I probably should have just shown the picture in the top of the table of contents. Could have got through this quicker, but I'm going to guess that's a Richard Powers cover art. It is. Kind of changing the formatting now, which is annoying. And I think I was just saying in a comment the other day to Richard at Vintage SF, I was saying that I wanted to collect this series. I didn't expect to just, inherit almost the entire thing. Oh, that's another Richard Powers painting. Now this one I did already own, but this was in a better condition. I think I read this last year, I read this entire book last year. It has Greg Bear's Blood Music, the novella. Which I did not actually read when I read this collection, because I've already read the novel. But I did read Homefaring. Yeah, Homefaring by Robert Silverberg, which is a really trippy, far future astral projection type story. 85, if I had to guess, I'd say that's Richard Powers cover art again. It is. Connie Willis, Ian Watson, Stephen R. Donaldson. Oh, Lucius Shepard. Oh, Bloodchild by Octavia E. Butler. Maybe the first piece of science fiction I ever read. I have no memory of how I came across that. I read it online, and it sparked my interest, but it would be a few more years before I actually really dove into SF. Highly recommend that short story and anything by Octavia Butler. 1986. This is some excellent cover art by Ron Wolotsky. Some Harlan Ellison in there. Sad thing is I don't have room for these. I was thinking maybe the top of my hardcover shelf, but really there's not space. So they're probably going to go into a box for a year and a half until I have a bigger place. Again, this is a Richard Powers. Richard Powers really struck a deal, I guess, for the cover art. But I gotta say, these do look awesome all lined up with their spines, which are pretty much the same throughout the entire run, aside from the color. 1988. Okay, the page is either ripped out, the table of contents, or they've kind of changed how they do this. Yeah, no table of contents for that one. Let's see if they stuck with that in 1989. Again, Richard Powers cover art. No, see, this one goes back to having a table of contents. That's strange. And 1990, the final one in the run. Like I said, I'm missing 2 or 3 total, which it'll be hard to resist tracking those down immediately just to complete the collection. Another Brian Stableford. I might... Oh, and Barrington J. Bailey, too. Excellent. And apologies if I'm not holding these up long enough. I often find after I go edit videos, I didn't hold stuff up long enough, and it's irritating for me and irritating for the viewer, I'm sure. So that's all of those DA annuals. I can't believe how lucky I got. I got all of those for $10. Let's stick with hardcovers. I've only got a few others here. So first up, I've got 2 books here that complete a little collection here. I managed to find both volumes of a Treasury of Great Science Fiction from 1959. Now, I already have volume 2, and mine's in better condition than this one, so I'll be letting that go. But I was absolutely thrilled to find, in decent shape, volume 1. And they actually look really nice when you line them up on the shelf. The art kind of lines up. So what is in volume 1? These are like major, well, novels, but by today's standards, they're mostly novellas, sorry. So Before the Curtain by Anthony Boucher, Rebirth by John Wyndham, The Shape of Things That Came, Richard Deming, Pillar of Fire by Ray Bradbury, Waldo by Heinlein, The Father Thing by Philip K. Dick, Children's Hour by Henry Kuttner and C.L. Moore. That's one I'm going to have to check out. Steve at Outlaw Bookseller has been subtly hinting that I should check out Henry Kuttner and C.L. Moore. Stay tuned, Steve. I got something coming up. Gomez by C.M. Kornbluth, who is another older author that I've been wanting to check out for quite a while. I really want the Nesfa Press edition of his, I think, complete short stories. The Widget, the Wadget, and Boff by Theodore Sturgeon. Sandra by George Eliot. Beyond Space and Time by Joel Townsley Rogers. The Martian Crown Jewels by Paul Anderson, which sounds awesome. And The Weapon Shops of Isher by A.E. Van Vogt. So, yeah, I am so happy to have that. I'm going to put that in a Brodart laminated jacket later today. And it's going to go up on the shelf with the other copy. And similar to what I just showed there, this is volume 1 of 2 volumes, edited by Brian Aldiss. It's Galactic Empires. I have had volume 2. Volume 2 I've had for a while now, which I wrapped up in a dust jacket because it's in such great shape. And I finally found volume 1. I couldn't believe it. In the span of about 10 seconds, I found the Great Treasury of Science Fiction and this. I couldn't believe it. They're only $1 or $2 each. But you know me, I love Galactic Empire stuff, like hard SF or space opera. But this is older stuff from the 50s and 60s. R.A. Lafferty, Arthur C. Clarke. A story called Protected Species by H.B. Fife, who I do not know, but it sounds interesting. Michael Shara. Paul Anderson, Isaac Asimov. Yeah, there's a Cordwainer Smith story I've read, The Crime and Glory of Commander Suzdal. Really good. That's in his future history. Yeah, just tons of great stuff. Quite happy to have that. And it's actually only the first of 2 Aldiss collections. I have Space Opera, which, again, this is just an anthology, but I like I wouldn't say I liked. It's an interesting description of space opera here. Let's see, when was this published first before I read it? 1974. And then just on the front of the jacket, it just says, in this collection, Aldiss honors science fiction's little sister, space opera. Space opera is full of melodrama, dreams, and a seasoning of screwy ideas. Okay. I thought that was a strange description of space opera. But very cool. Not big on the cover art, but I actually have other anthologies by Aldiss. He did a bunch, and have I read any of them? I don't think so, but I certainly like collecting them. But I like the theme, space opera. That's going to be a good one. Okay, and next up, another anthology. This one edited by Damon Knight. It's a science fiction Argosy. I think it was Bridger at a library ladder that mentioned this as one of like the seminal or one of the must-haves in science fiction anthologies. I think I forgot to look that up and confirm. I know it was mentioned by someone recently on Science Fiction Booktube. Just tons and tons of good stuff. I think there's, what is it, 24? Yeah, 24 of the best stories and 2 full-length classic novels. Not sure why they have it divided into book 1 and 2, unless it was released as 2 books in the past. More Than Human, well, that's a full novel by Theodore Sturgeon. I'm just trying to find what the other... Oh, The Demolished Man by Alfred Bester. That's probably the other full-length story, which I have and have read. Kind of in beat-up shape, but really happy to have that, especially if it is the one that Bridger was recommending. Okay, this one is not fiction. It's Isaac Asimov, Extraterrestrial Civilizations. Just speculations. A book I've actually seen online and contemplated ordering in the past, but just couldn't bring myself to spend the money. And I lucked out because I spent next to nothing to get this. I've got a couple books like this by him and Arthur C. Clarke, but not usually in a nice hardcover. I like that art. And last of the hardcovers, I was really happy to find this. Not that I needed it. I already have a paperback. I've read it twice, but it's the 10th anniversary hardcover edition of Gibson's Neuromancer. One of my favorite books, so I quickly grabbed that. Almost good, perfect shape. It's a little, it feels like it's bent or something, but couldn't pass that up for a very, very cheap price. And that leaves us with just a handful of paperbacks here. I'm going to start with something that's been on my radar for years, but I know next to nothing about. It's a 5-book series, and I managed to get books 2, 3, and 4. Oh no, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm just missing book 1, and chances are it was there and I just didn't see it. It's Doris Lessing. I believe she won a Nobel Prize for Literature. These are the Cannabis and Argos archives. They're like a future history. They're all linked, but you can read them in any order. And they just deal with like an advanced civilization trying to speed up the development of lesser species. And I think Earth plays heavily in a couple of them, as in like humanity's being tampered with. If you read the synopsis and stuff, though, it's really quite vague, like how these read. I don't know. I think they're mostly going to be character-driven, about social changes and whatnot. Especially considering, you know, she's a Nobel Prize winning author. But I'm so happy I found these. I'm just a little annoyed that book 1 wasn't there, because I'm guessing it was, and I just didn't see it. These were all spread out. All 4 were in different boxes. They're all from Granada too, which you don't find many of those in my neck of the woods. So I'm happy to find these. I don't know when I'll get to them. But I do like future histories, and it certainly helps that you can read them in any order. All right, moving on. This is one I've been looking for a while. It's Alien Embassy by Ian Watson. I think this is in humanity's future, but it involves astral projection, inhabiting the minds of other alien civilizations, those who are receptive, and learning about the universe through them. So, traveling the universe with your consciousness rather than physically. Galactic Patrol, one of the Lensman books by E. Doc Smith, and surprisingly one I don't have. It's the only one I saw. I just grabbed it. Wasn't sure if I had it or not, but it turns out I don't. I've got 3 Larry Niven here. The Magic May Return. I was just talking about this recently because I got When the Magic Goes Away recently, which is like a heavily illustrated, just like this. Kind of, I guess it's fantasy. It involves just magic kind of leaving the world. Niven wrote the first one, whereas this is a collection of short stories. And he had different authors write a couple stories. So Niven wrote one, Fred Saberhagen wrote one, Dean Ing wrote one, Stephen Barnes wrote one, and then Poul Anderson wrote one with Mildred Downey Broxson, whom I have not heard of. Not something I would probably pay too much for, but it was $1 or so, so I grabbed it. Larry Niven, The Draco Tavern. This is a collection of short stories involving, I think, a bartender who works at... I know it's about a tavern that gets set up in Siberia after aliens kind of descend and set up a spaceport. And the tavern's kind of a place where, you know, various species go to hang out and trade stories. And the main character is Rick Schumann, and it's just his many adventures with different aliens that he comes across, or just conversations with them, I believe. Not one I have ever really seen or heard mentioned. And then Larry Niven's A World at a Time. I read this. I had it in first edition hardcover, I believe, years ago. Got rid of it in hopes that I would find this copy someday because I'm collecting the Del Rey copies that were released, I think like mid-70s, weren't they? Yeah, 76. I just love that livery that they had. Got a bunch of them now. I must have almost all of them. I got another one set aside that I bought from the bookstore on Pluto.ca. I just haven't picked it up from them yet. So I must have almost all of these liveries by now, I would think. This one will make Steve happy. The Best of C.L. Moore. I practically jumped out of my shoes when I saw this. I've wanted this for so long, I just can never find it. Because I've wanted to check out C.L. Moore for a while now. I've recently become obsessed with Lee Brackett, and it's been suggested to me that I would like C.L. Moore if I like her. So happy to have that. I think there's a Henry Kuttner one of these too. I would want that as well. I've got two by Philip Jose Farmer here, Down in the Black Gang. This is a short story collection. I don't recognize any of the short stories in it, but I haven't read much Farmer myself anyway. This one, Tongues of the Moon, doesn't sound great, has poor reviews. I already knew that from having looked it up in the past, but I couldn't resist, you know, that funky cover art. This is about, I think, the moon and Mars are colonized and then Earth is destroyed. Stuff happens after that, I guess. Not highly rated from what I've seen. Two here by Rudy Rucker, who's associated with cyberpunk, but I never hear him spoke about, so I'm not sure how good or how recommended his stuff is, but this is Live Robots, which is actually just two of his novels, Software and Wetware, combined. One of which I have. Jeez. Perfect, right in my eyesight. I have Wetware, so I'll probably get rid of that and just keep this early-ish cyberpunk. 90s, I would guess. Sorry, 82 and 88. So yeah, that's early cyberpunk. I don't know if it's highly recommended, but I've got another Rudy Rucker here, The Hacker and the Ants. Not big on that, what I consider pretty tacky cover art, but again, cyberpunk-ish, or so it says. When was this written? 94. All right, we're down at the end now. I got two Peter Hamiltons that I already have, but neither of which I've read. I have these in big trade paperback copies, so I recently realized you can get more books on here if you just collect, you know, mass market paperback and slightly bit larger. So I'm kind of thinning out the large trade paperbacks and replacing some of those books. So Mindstar Rising and Fallen Dragon. I don't believe these are connected, but they both kind of involve large, powerful, corrupt corporations. I haven't read any Hamilton in years. He was one of the first authors I read around the time I read Baxter and Reynolds, but Baxter and Reynolds really spoke to me more. And the last three, I'm really happy to find these all, you know, in same liveries and in great shape. Some Greg Egan. Tyrannesia, which who knows if I'm pronouncing that right, is a novel. But the other two are probably what I'm more excited about. Luminous, they're both short story collections. And what did I recently just read of his? That was really good. When I was on vacation, I finished Diaspora, which was just, considering it was written in the early 90s, insane depiction of virtual reality. Really hard SF, hard virtual environments, but so realistic. Gave that a 4 out of 5. It would have been a 5, but the science was so over my head for most of the time. Just the frustration from not understanding half the stuff is what lowers it for me. And then Axiomatic is, I think, a later released collection of his short stories. So those are cool. I have no idea what I'm going to do here. A lot of this will have to be boxed up or something, or I was playing with the idea of taking all the trade paperbacks off the shelves and having more room for the mass markets and stuff. But and that does it for this book haul. I am still reading Greg Bear. I did end up starting Aeon, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm not big on the Russians versus Americans, but it was written in the 80s. But really loving it. Gonna stick with that. Probably read Eternity after that, and then I don't know what I'll go to after that, considering I have so much to choose from now. But as always, thanks for watching, and see you next time.